Refugees, bombings, starvation, diseases, economic collapse, and fear. Although this may sound like the picture of the First or the Second World War, it is actually happening in the present. Conflict that has been happening for over a decade, not being covered by the media. Nearly 20 million people depend on aid to survive. A humanitarian and political crisis that shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. We're talking about a country in the south of the problematic Middle East, Yemen. For centuries, the territory of today's Yemen was controlled by many different kingdoms or civilizations, such as the Sabaean or Himyarite kingdom. But then, Islam knocked on the door and quickly took over Yemen. Over time, various Islamic dynasties ruled over this land. It was rarely governed as a single, united land. In the 1500s, the Ottomans took over to access the Red Sea for trade. However, Yemen's rocky, uneven surface made it difficult for them to control. They decided to run off, but then came back in the 1800s, taking over the northern part of the country. Meanwhile, the British Empire took control of the Port Aden in 1839 as a strategic move to gain control over the route between Suez and India. As a result, Ottomans controlled the north and Britain the south of Yemen. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire was humbled and collapsed. Because of this, the Mutawakkilite Kingdom of Yemen, under this guy, was formed in the north. This kingdom was deeply religious, conservative, and isolated from the outside world. In 1962, after more than 40 years of rule, a group of military officers, inspired by Arab nationalism, staged a coup against Imam Yahya's successor and declared the formation of the Yemen Arab Republic. This incident provoked the Northern Yemen Civil War, which lasted 8 years from 1962 to 1970, and ended with a victory for the Republicans. Meanwhile, in the southern part of the country, the British Empire held its control for longer, mostly because of the port, Aden. However, growing national movements and irritation with colonial rule led to revolution. Britain withdrew, and the South became independent as the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, a socialist state allied with the Soviet Union. It was the first and only officially communist country in the Arab world ever. Wait a second, communist? We are in the Middle East, a land with Islamic history and British influence. How does this formula equal the creation of a Soviet country? Well, during the revolutions, dozens of revolutionary groups wanted to take control. The strongest among them was the National Liberation Front, which had two rival camps within. One was Arab nationalist, inspired by Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, and the second one was radical Marxist, an ideology that supports socialism over capitalism. This second group eventually won and took over the new country. In 1990, North and South Yemen, two dissimilar countries, decided to merge. They unified under one flag, so it seemed like one country from the outside, but inside, things were much more complicated. It was a merging of two completely different countries with very different ideologies, which didn't last long. Just 4 years after unification, the army of northern Yemen completely crushed the south. They wanted to be divided again. All of this was led by the former president, Ali Abdullah Saleh. Originally president of northern Yemen, he stayed in his position in the unified country. He ruled through corruption and favoritism. Meanwhile, in the north, a Zaidi Shia group, or the Houthis, inconspicuously began to rise. One of the members, who later became leader Hussein al-Houthi, was frustrated with how the corrupt country worked and began a political rebellion. He basically said that Saleh's government sucks. Saleh accused him of trying to overthrow the state, and things started to go wrong quickly. It didn't turn into a war, it turned into 6 wars. The first war broke out in 2004 after Saleh signed a border agreement with Saudi Arabia and demanded the Houthis disarm. Hussein refused, so the government arrested hundreds of his followers, and in September of 2004 found Hussein, captured, and executed him. This execution added even more wood to the fire, and the conflict continued with 5 other wars: 2005, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. During the first war, Saleh claimed that Houthis were supported by Iran. Iran and Saudi Arabia hate each other a lot. That's why, when in 2009 Houthis directly attacked Saudi troops, Iran saw them as a potential ally and started sending them weapons. By 2010, around 25,000 people had been killed and 300,000 displaced. Even though Saleh's government had more weapons and troops, it failed to destroy the Houthi movement. In fact, with each war, Houthi became stronger, better organized, and more respected, which was becoming a serious problem. Between 2011 and 2014, Yemen went through another chaotic period. In early 2011, a wave of protests called the Arab Spring spread through the country and the region. Thousands of people went to the streets, demanding one thing in Yemen: end Saleh's 33-year rule. For decades, the country had suffered from corruption, poverty, and unemployment, while Saleh watched it all from his palace and simply didn't care. He tried to calm the situation by saying things like, "Hey, don't worry, I won't run for president again," but it didn't really do anything. During the Arab Spring, several hundred people were killed. Not long after, in June of 2011, Saleh was badly injured because the Houthis decided to bomb his palace. He rushed to Saudi Arabia for medical treatment, and during that time, people were left confused about who was in charge. In November, he finally decided to step down in exchange for immunity from prosecution. New Yemen's president became his vice president, Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi, after an uncontested election. Yes, this will definitely make things better. The thing Hadi inherited was not really a country. Rather, it was a huge land with a collapsing economy, a divided army, terrorist attacks, and a people who did not trust the government. As a first step, Hadi launched something called the National Dialogue Conference. The idea was to bring everyone together to discuss Yemen's problems and come up with a new plan for the future. The conference lasted almost 10 months. It made progress on paper, but the reality on the ground didn't change much. He apparently had overestimated his capabilities. Hadi's government was simply weak. That was not a secret. The Houthis on the other side started to think this was a good chance to take action. Throughout 2014, they took control over northern areas, and in September, they took over the core, the capital, Sana'a. Government soldiers barely resisted, and some even joined them. Soon enough, they'd captured the airport, the port city of Hodeidah, and to make things worse, an ex-President Saleh decided to join the Houthis as revenge against Hadi, who had taken his place. What an unexpected plot twist. So Saleh's loyalists joined forces with the Houthis, and together they captured military bases, tanks, artillery, basically every military asset they could find, and made the government literally powerless. Hadi found himself trapped. In January 2015, Houthis arrested him in his house and made him resign from the presidency. Just a month later, he successfully escaped Sana'a and ran to the southern port city of Aden. Once there, he took back his resignation, declared himself the legitimate president, and called the Houthis' takeover a coup. However, the Houthis launched aggressive attacks on southern Yemen, since they controlled most of the north, and Hadi had to fly to Saudi Arabia for safety. As a good friend, Saudi Arabia launched Operation Decisive Storm. Their goals were simple: restore Hadi's government, stop Iranian influence from spreading through the Houthis, and simply prevent Yemen from becoming another Iranian ally. To achieve this, they launched massive airstrikes on the south and blocked the Red Sea passage so they could block Iran's military supplies. This also meant the country entered an even worse state and became one of the worst humanitarian crises. By late 2017, Saleh switched sides again. He'd had enough of the Houthis and wanted to work with the Saudi-led coalition instead. Coalition of several Middle East countries supported by the United States. He publicly called on Yemenis to rise up against the Houthis and called them basically the bad guys. Within 2 days, he'd been killed, and his loyalists were forced to either surrender or join the coalition. Yemen is a pure mess. The north is controlled by Houthis, the south by Hadi's government. Both sides are economically unstable. What would it look like if we got ourselves a new enemy? Well, that's exactly what happened in the south in 2017. Hadi faced a new rival, the Southern Transitional Council, or STC. They were a separatist group that wanted to bring back the old South Yemen as an independent country. They were backed by the United Arab Emirates, which was part of the coalition, but chased its own interests in the south. In 2018, the STC captured the port of Aden, kicking Hadi out. The UAE was basically fighting Saudi Arabia, just in a different country. While the leaders fought, ordinary Yemenis were the ones paying the price. By 2021, the conflict had caused an estimated 377,000 deaths. About 60 to 70% of these were due to hunger, disease, and lack of health care. Between 2015 and 2020, around 4 million people ran away from the country. That is around 10% of the population. Making things worse, the Saudi-led blockade, which was meant to stop weapons from reaching the Houthis, also blocked food and medicine from entering Yemen, pushing the population towards starvation. The West indeed supports the Saudi coalition. The United States, for example, provided intelligence and logistics, and sold over $110 billion in weapons. The UK also helped by selling weapons. In 2018, however, the US Senate voted to use the War Powers Resolution to step away from the Yemen conflict. After years of war, Yemen saw rare hope in April of 2022, when the United Nations negotiated a 2-month truce between the Houthis and the government. Basically, a short time of not fighting. Although it eventually expired in October, violence reached the lowest level since 2015. Meanwhile, at that time, Hadi resigned from the presidency and handed the power to the Presidential Leadership Council, or PLC, led by this guy. All the optimism went away when in 2023 Hamas attacked Israel. The Houthis, aligned with Iran, declared war on Israel and began launching missiles and drones, later also attacking ships in the Red Sea. They even hijacked a cargo ship, Galaxy Leader, forcing ships to go around Africa. In response, the US launched Operation Prosperity Guardian to protect those ships. Analysts now call Yemen a forever war, where outside countries like Saudi Arabia or Iran fight indirectly. With too many groups and political divides, a lasting peace remains uncertain.